Roe v. Wade, a 1973 Supreme Court decision, federally protected a person's right to choose to have an abortion. However, in June 2022, the Supreme Court overturned Roe in the Dobbs v. Jackson's Women's Health Organization case, and as a result, the legality of abortion would be determined by individual states.
We have a number of states that have decided to protect access to abortion care and ensure that their communities can get the care that they need right there where they live in their neighborhoods. And then on the flip side, we have states that have enacted medically unnecessary and extremely dangerous abortion restrictions and abortion bans in their state.
What happened? I mean, did something profound change in our society between 1973 and 2022 that led to Roe being overruled? And the answer is really no. What did move is the makeup of the U.S. Supreme Court. It became increasingly conservative over time, and it became apparent with President Trump was going to be able to appoint a couple of people, as it turned out 3, that was going to shift the majority in a way that was going to be the end of Roe. And seeing that coming, a lot of states began to enact laws that weren't constitutional at the time, but they knew that by the time they worked their way up through the court system and got to the Supreme Court would likely be in a place where we'd be interested in revisiting Roe.
Politicians are willing to, in their position of public office, lie time and time again about what abortion care looks like. And their intent to do that is to create fear and shame and stigma around abortion care so that people feel like it's a very polarizing issue and that they're concerned that if they talk about the fact that they had an abortion, that they might get punished or they might get criminalized. And so this fear culture that's being really stirred up by the anti-abortion politicians is really dangerous, and it's one that we can only combat by being louder about talking about just how normal abortion is, how safe abortion is, and how it's a very basic part of primary care and healthcare.
I chose to have an abortion back in 2007 when I was around 30 years old in the state of Florida. And when I had the abortion, there were 2 roadblocks in the way. The first one was that there was a 24-hour waiting period after you came in to say that you wanted an abortion. And then the second one was that you had to look at the baby monitor before they would let you have your final abortion there.
On the right, I think motivated by a realization that overturning Roe didn't really end abortion the way they thought it might. You've seen very concerted pushes as to medication and as to travel.
I'm actually partnered to an abortion provider. She provides care in Kansas, in Oklahoma, in Arkansas, and in Western Missouri. And so overnight, she went from being able to take care of folks in 4 states to suddenly only being able to take care of folks in 1 state. Especially after Texas's SB 8 went into effect, which was essentially a total ban on abortion care for people in Texas. There were many folks who were traveling to get care in Oklahoma. This was an access point that folks were really relying on. And so when their ban went into effect, and then Arkansas's ban went into effect, the neighboring states that folks were really relying on were then just as inaccessible. And what this means is there's an enormous burden on folks who have to travel to get abortion care, a burden that's so large that many people actually aren't able to go and get that care. We have providers in states that have protected access to abortion who are taking care of more patients than ever because of how many folks are traveling to the states where abortion is still accessible.
In some counties along the Texas-New Mexico line, because Texas, of course, does not allow abortion, New Mexico does, they've passed ordinances that say it is against the local law to drive through those counties on the way to New Mexico for the purpose of obtaining an abortion. How they intend to enforce that, I'm not sure, but the law is on the books. I think it's designed to have kind of an in terrorem effect, scare people away from trying to drive into New Mexico.
We saw that the very architect of Texas's SB 8, the abortion ban that went into effect well before the Dobbs decision was issued, he went after the abortion funds and abortion care providers in the state of Texas who have been working tirelessly to continue to show up for Texans as they travel out of state to get care. He wanted their private information, their names, he wanted the names of donors, and it's clear that it was in an attempt to surveil and threaten and shame and potentially punish these people. We are a part of a very strong community who will never, ever succumb to those threats. The funds and this particular abortion provider in Texas, they did take the case to court. And so they are going to continue to push back and attempt to protect the very important and private personal information of the folks in the community that they've been providing care for.
In Amarillo, there was a lawsuit brought several months ago to challenge the FDA's approval of mifepristone, one of the key medications used for medication abortions. It was enjoined by Judge Kaczmarek sitting in Amarillo, went to the Fifth Circuit, which sort of kind of affirmed him, and now the Supreme Court is deciding whether to take that case. But that was driven by activist groups around the country, really, but by deciding that Texas was a good place to bring that suit, and the Fifth Circuit a good court of appeals to go to from there. So that's a very important case about what overruling Roe really means. There's another issue out there about whether the mail can be used to send abortion medications. There's an old law from the late 19th century that actually makes it illegal to use the mail to send abortion medication in interstate commerce. And everybody kind of forgot about that law while Roe was in effect, but now that Roe is no longer the law, there sits that law. And the question of whether or not that law still has the effect that it appears to have from its plain terms is going to be a very significant question in future abortion litigation.
A 24-hour waiting period. Bias, state-mandated counseling, and they can't use their private or state insurance to pay for it. Since the 6-week ban decimated abortion access across our state, our clients have been moving now more than ever. We cover most people's procedures in full so that they don't have to cancel.
On the left, and this isn't so much in Texas, but it affects Texas, you see people trying to protect providers of abortion out of Texas from getting sucked into litigation in Texas. New York, for example, recently enacted this SHIELD law that creates a privilege under New York law to being sued anywhere, including Texas or any other state where abortion is illegal, for civil damages, other legal claims arising from providing abortion services.
Well, first they were saying they want all abortions. Now they're saying some abortions. Can we please just allow them for criminal acts of rape and incest? But there's no space there for women who just make good decisions for themselves. And that's what I find the most heartbreaking, is it's completely invalidating all of the women who have a valid reason for wanting to have an abortion.
When you ban any kind of abortion at any point in pregnancy, you really are preventing someone from being able to practice their own bodily autonomy. Because abortion care is an essential piece of the broad spectrum of reproductive health care that we as individuals need over the course of our lifetimes, when you attack and remove and restrict access to that one piece, it has a very direct ripple effect to every other type of care around it.
In 2011, Texas cut its family planning budget from $111 million to $38 million, leading to the closure of 82 clinics, 25% of publicly funded ones. Texas also removed Planned Parenthood from state-funded health programs and turned down federal funds. This resulted in Planned Parenthood losing funding for important services like cancer screenings and contraception. In 2022, Texas filed a federal lawsuit claiming that Planned Parenthood wrongly billed Medicaid $10 million during efforts to remove the organization from the program. Texas is seeking over $1.8 billion in reimbursement, penalties, and fees from Planned Parenthood.
And that's worsening the maternal health deserts that our country was already experiencing. And what I mean by that is there are many broad swaths of the country who really don't have enough doctors who are able to care for pregnant people to deliver babies, because it's become a hostile environment for them to try and do their jobs.
So there's been a lot of grassroots activism left and right in Texas and across the country, and there will be for years to come, because there are a lot of nuances in the modern marketplace for providing medical services and medication.
There's an intensity of trying to, on one side, create safe communities, and on the other side, really try to shame and threaten and potentially criminalize people.
My hopes for the future, obviously, that the Supreme Court brings another case that, again, federalizes abortion so that we don't have to have these patchwork laws and women that aren't able to access health care. I'm also hopeful that we destigmatize the language around abortion so that people who are choosing to have an abortion just because it's not the right time, not the right person, just not the right choice for them, that they can talk about it as openly as other women do who say had a medical reason for needing to have an abortion. And my hopes are that there are no unwanted children born in the future because a woman could not access health care.
True access. What does it mean for someone to find out that they're pregnant, know that they don't want to be, and no matter who they are, where they live, no matter how much money they make, no matter what God they pray to, they are able to pick up the phone, call someone, and get the help that they need, with no barrier and no delay.
As of November 2023, 21 states have already banned or imposed earlier pregnancy restrictions.